Welcome to another episode of Talking Filthy here with Kurt Dabb, and we're about to get this kicked off where we're going to chat about some anxiety-related stuff for police officers, and kind of like what it's about, from our perspective, what that anxiety can do to you. What's up, Kurt?
Not much, man. Just enjoying some Bush NA while you're smoking your cigar. We got to do one of these in person so I can enjoy the smell.
Yeah, dude, that's something I picked up is, actually, since we're talking about anxiety, I quit chewing tobacco years ago and did it for a long time, ever since I was a kid on the farm. And so nicotine was always kind of in my life till about 2009, 2010 or something like that, and then I kind of gave it up. But since I retired, just kind of picked up the cigar as a way to just kind of sit, chill, and kind of do my thing. Now the podcast is also a great way to kind of relieve that anxiety, and I think that's what we're going to chat about. So Bush, non-alcoholic beer, man.
Yeah, Bush NA.
I've got to try that, dude, just because it's Bush.
It's the old high school drink of choice.
Yeah.
Only because of financial lack of financial shit. When I was in high school, like gas was 25, 35 cents a gallon or some shit like that.
Right.
Maybe 75 cents a gallon, but
right.
Everyone
a pack of cigarettes was $1.25 maybe.
Yeah, can of Copenhagen was $1.25.
Yeah. Crazy times.
Good old days.
Yeah. So, dude, we've been talking a lot. First of all, we've gotten a lot of good feedback on the podcast on the stuff we've been doing, so I want to kind of keep it rolling. Do some episodes just kind of light, humorous, but then also kind of dive into some of the things that we experience with this job. And it's funny because I was listening to another police podcast today, and these two guys that were on there, one was a you could tell he's probably 15, 20-year veteran, and one was about an 8-10-year veteran. And they're just kind of same shit, talking about divorce, alcoholism, the anxiety, always on alert, and all that stuff. And I think it resonates. If you've done this job for, let's say 6 months to a year, I think anxiety starts to set in. I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but just from outside looking in. What's your thoughts, man?
Yeah, one of the things that keeps going over, my head is if we could key in or find out when that first happens to new cops, and then get them involved with some type of therapy, agencies would be a lot better, right? We talked last week about cops that go rogue. When cops join the force, they don't. 99.999% of us do the job because of service. We want to help the community. We want to help our families. It's a profession. Some of them, will do stupid shit. They'll steal, they'll lie, they'll cheat. But it's the ones that always get the media attention, for excessive force and things like that. And it's my belief, and based on my own personal experience and 20 years of seeing how cops work, that if we could get that anxiety immediately, then departments would be safer, the public would be better, we would be a lot healthier, we would be more productive. But that's a hard thing to get into, because we like to suppress everything, and it's very scary to come forward and admit that you're weak, right?
Yeah, I think first part is, and we've talked about this, it has to start at the academy level where, there's a part of the training where you're taught to put your feelings aside, do your job, carry through, but it's not really followed up with anything afterwards. So, All right, instructor A is telling new recruits, hey, you're going to go to a call where a child was raped or a child is dead or whatever the case is. and it's going to be very traumatizing and sad. You're going to want to cry and maybe some other things. And dude, you and I both experienced that, where you walk up and there's a dead kid, and it takes everything you have to hold it in and be professional, you know, for the sake of the victims that are family to that child too, you know. So anyway, I digressed a little bit there, but so they put a lot of training into that part, but we don't follow it up, and we haven't for, you know, I think we're doing a better job in law enforcement maybe, but I think it has to really follow up with, okay, we're done with the call, now what, you know, and what do we do with this, and how do we kind of harness some resources, and maybe it's full on doctor, maybe it's peer. I probably would have benefited from peer group settings like you and I, even just you and I chatting. I would have definitely benefited where, and it has to be mandatory, I think, where the agency says, all right, you three that were on this call, when we end this shift or tomorrow's shift, this is where you're going to go report, and you're going to go see so-and-so who has experience in this, and maybe the doc is there and stuff like that. That's just my opinion. I think we leave that wide open. So you go home and you're like, God damn, I'm upset. I'm fucking pissed off, and I don't know what to do with this. And that's the part after, I think, years where it gets broken.
Yeah. Or you come home from a day at work and you end up going in your bedroom and crawling up in the fetal position on a bed because you're hurting so much inside, and then you just uncontrollably start crying. I know I'm not the only one that's happened to, bro. And it's happened a number of times. And it's just that anxiety and that overwhelming sense of panic and fear and grief, because we don't get the opportunity to process all of that information from those individual calls. And if there was something out there peer related or mandatory, by a specific agency, I think it would be extremely beneficial. But again, we're dealing with cops, we're dealing with type A personalities, and until more people speak about it and become comfortable with it and humble enough, it's going to be very difficult for cops to come forward, just for fear of being looked upon as weak, fear of retribution from your agency, fear of losing your job, all that stuff, man. It has to go away.
Yeah, what's interesting, and I'm hoping to get him on the podcast to talk about. I have a good friend of mine here in town. He's a former very high level tier 1 operator. On the Army side, he Marine Recon, then he went to Army Green Beret, and then he went to the next level. And without, talking about his background too much, you can guess. Like he's the real deal. Like they make movies about fucking guys like this. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
He's very, very, very humble and very honest about how they do business. And what I found interesting was he said, we lost an operator in Afghanistan, and he was a good friend of mine. They travel with a psychiatrist and they travel with a surgeon when they're operational, which I think is badass and money well spent.
Yeah.
I'll pay that tax dollar every day of the week, to keep those guys and gals running. But he said that they have a very important grieving process that they go through, where everyone spends time with the body of right after the operation with the lost, colleague, and the doc is there, and they're kind of working through all these things, and they've had training up to that point of, hey, you're going to get injured, your colleagues are going to get injured, they're going to die, you might die, and they kind of work through all of that dynamic so that the several $1 million they have wrapped up in these guys doesn't implode on them, and I find that I think there's a really good correlation where I'm going with this, is that
absolutely
we spend hundreds of thousands of dollars. You've got 20 years. I've got 20 years. I think between the two of us, we've got well over $1 million worth of tax money invested in us just to fall apart because the system is broken,
Yeah. And there was a psychologist that used to work with and / for the sheriff's department for a while. She's very, very well known in the military genre, special forces specifically, and she may have been, one of those doctors, that psychologists that traveled around with those guys. And those are the type of people that we need working for agencies. I mean, our agency doesn't have a psychologist at all. Nothing. Hasn't for years. And it's sad.
That's mind-boggling to me, right? So
Yeah.
your agency is what, 400 to 600, personnel,
Yeah.
somewhere in that range. Of all the money that we spend on stupid shit in government across the board, county, state, federal, wherever, why wouldn't you spend the money on, you pay for a fleet technician to work for the government, for that. Why don't you take care of the machine that you have? And so, yeah, I think that has to be step number one, is that you've got the proper physicians, licensed medical people there. And I definitely believe, you and I talked about this, a good support system within peers,
Yeah.
that has to be there as well.
It's anxiety it's a motherfucker, dude, and it's a killer. It can drive you to suicide if it's not dealt with appropriately, effectively, and within a timely fashion. Because guys and girls, cops, we keep that shit in. And I'll give you an example. Earlier this week, on back-to-back days, and I live in a pretty safe neighborhood. There's not a lot of shit that goes on in my neighborhood. You've been here. It's nice. We had a burglary where some guy broke into a house, actually shot into the house. There was a teenager in the house at the time. I come home. I'm driving up the road. I see deputies have the area quadded off, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on? My anxiety, all I was thinking about, I didn't know what was going on until, I stopped and, inquired about what was up. And I hauled ass home in the red, heart rate probably about 130, wanting to get home to make sure that my kids were okay, that nothing happened here. And man, I was high on anxiety and fucking panic for 6-7 hours after I got home. I just couldn't bring myself down. And when you can't bring yourself down, that's when cops start making mistakes. Now imagine that cop on duty getting involved in, a chase, a car chase, a foot chase, a fight, what have you, and having that anxiety time after time after time and not being able to control it. That's where I think these, a lot of the excessive force things come into play, because they turn on that switch and it turns on like a light switch and you can't turn it off. It's not something that goes away. You can learn how to deal with it through therapy, through peer support, and things of that nature. And it needs to be a huge focus.
Yeah, I think anxiety is, what the best way to describe it for me is misplaced adrenaline. It's adrenaline that's at the wrong place. Yeah, it's all over the fucking place, and it's pretty good for the most of my career of controlling it, working through it. But there comes a time, I think, in the latter part of my career, and mine was complicated in the sense of I had some internal administrative things with my agency that I was not jiving with, and I wasn't in trouble or anything. I had a shitty boss, and I had a couple other shitty bosses, and shitty bosses above them.
We've all had them.
Right, and it just compiled, so my anxiety would set in to the point where it was just overwhelming, and I was like, what the fuck is this? First, this is 3-4 years ago. Kind of like, what the fuck? Why can't I shake this? It eventually got so bad that, I think I was pretty close to, like a panic state a couple of times and I'd never panicked. I'd been on the the working end of an M4 and houses, and all that kind of business. But yeah, that's weird. And then you finally have to go, oh, fuck, this is anxiety, and then it leads to depression. That's when it got fucking ugly. You talked about cops committing suicide, and I don't have all the answers or knowledge about that, but man, it's a touchy thing. And this week I was doing a talk show on a local radio. We were talking about the state of current policing, and one of the callers asked me, what's making all these cops kill themselves? And I'm like, Jesus Christ, that's a whole morning show itself right there. But what I wanted to tell him, and I just didn't have the time, was I think the underlying factor is uncontrolled anxiety, and it just leads to so many other things.
Yeah, there was a point in time last year where I thought about suicide. And it wasn't a weekly thing or a daily thing. It was an every fucking second of every single day thing. I hurt so much inside. It's not a physical pain, but you can't breathe. You have all this adrenaline rushing through you. Your body feels like you're full of electricity, and you just can't get it out. I used to go, when this was occurring, I'm a runner, and I use running as part of my therapy, and I would be out on runs, and I couldn't fucking breathe, man. It felt like there was an elephant sitting on my chest. That's that panic. It's a panic attack.
Yeah.
I'm not like freaking out, like some tweaker, but it's just you can't breathe. And I went to the doctor, and he's like, "There's nothing wrong with you, dude." I went to urgent care, got blood tests done, X-rays, EKGs, the whole 9 yards. And
I laugh
my doctor,
because I know exactly. You don't know what it is. Yeah, you think, shit, I got a heart condition here. What's going on, man?
My doctor even gave me his fucking cell phone number. He's like, "Look, when you're next time you're out on a run and you can't breathe," he's like, "Call me." So, and it would be to where not only couldn't I breathe, but I could barely talk. It was like my esophagus would just swell up, and I would be talking like this. So I called him, and I was talking like that. He was like, "You need to come in." So I went in, got a bunch more tests, and nothing. They couldn't figure out what it was. And I didn't know what it was until I started going to therapy. And I'm describing this to my therapist. She's like, "Yeah, that's anxiety and you panic attacks." And I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, now that I know what it is, I want to fucking fix it. Don't. It's not like I have a headache and you're going to give me Tylenol or Motrin or something I don't want to treat the effects. I want to get to the root cause. I want to figure out. And that's where that humbleness comes in, and you have to be like an open book, bro.
Yeah, for sure. For me, it was very similar. Where mine was like confused, where the panic would set in, and I just became like, I knew where I was at, and what time of day and stuff, but I just like couldn't formulate. Okay, how you're like, all right, this afternoon I'm going to do this. I'm going to pay some bills. I'm going to run down to the post office. I'm going to do this. Like none of that. Like I couldn't formulate any, and I just sat there, and my wife would talk to me, and she's like, "Did you hear a word I said?" And I'm like, and I'm not, and it's not the typical husband, blowing your wife off. It's just like I legitimately, like it went right through, and so. And
I get like that all the time.
You feel fucking overwhelmed, and I'm like, man, I used to be able to be on these high stress level calls, and why can't I get out of the fucking bed and brush my teeth and take a shower and then take the next step and get up and get going? There was times where I was out at the academy and I couldn't even function around people, where I started like the claustrophobia or something like that, and the anxiety, and I have to, I'd have to go step away because I started lashing out at people, and I had a history of that shit anyway, so it was just compounding it anyway. Mine was anger infused. You know what I mean? Like the anxiety, I would retaliate with anger, and so dude, it's crazy how overwhelming that shit can be.
Dude, it's the other day after that shit in the neighborhood, I went into my bedroom I laid there with my dogs, and I fucking turned on. I have a bunch of SpongeBob on the DVR, and I turned it on and I started watching it, man. And it gets to the point to where you're so afraid to fucking go outside. You're so afraid to be around people. You're afraid to be around your family members because of things that you might say or do that may be misconstrued. It's not out of, malice. I'm not angry at my wife or my kids. It's just I can't physically be around anybody right now. And I literally went in my bedroom and laid down on the bed. I was in there for about 4 hours. My wife came home. She's like, "What's wrong?" And I told her what happened. And, it's like, fuck, dude. Like, I don't want to be like this anymore. I want to be normal.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
And it's a long process. I think the best thing I did, the worst thing I did was not tell my wife how bad I was. Initially, like, it was fucking bad, and I was at the point of having those thoughts of I can't do this anymore. And it's funny because you're like, it's not funny. What I'm saying is just like how I'm a pretty logical guy, risk versus reward all the way through everything my entire life. And sometimes I'll be a little more risky and a little more edgy, but I just was like, I don't give a fuck anymore. I want this to stop. I don't care about money. I don't care about family stuff. I don't care. But then it came back full circle. It was like, okay, this is about family. You're going to have to work through this and figure this shit out. And then, so I told her, and she was kind of like, I kind of knew something was going on, and then retirement was inevitable. You know what I mean? I didn't leave the job because I hated the job anymore. I hated the shitty people that caused the stress and the anxiety, but I still loved being a cop, and it was just time to go. And that was the biggest thing to reduce my anxiety was, okay, get rid of the toxic source of this thing. And so that helped a lot.
Well, and then you bring up a good point. We deal with the anxiety going call to call to call, whether it's the most mundane call or the craziest fucking call of the year. But then you're dealing with that anxiety, but then you're also having to deal with the anxiety of the people that you work for. And just because you're promoted to sergeant, lieutenant, or captain, or chief, or what have you, doesn't make you a good leader.
Yeah, I found that to be true.
It's a rank. It gives you supervisory powers. There are a lot of people that are good test takers, good interviewers, good on oral boards, and those are, a lot of the times the ones that get promoted. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you're doing that just to get that rank, you also need to put in that time and effort to learn from real leaders. And they could be a deputy that's got a year on, could be a leader. A cop that's got 5 years on, a cop that's got 15 years on, And when those people in those supervisory positions really start taking ownership of it and learning how to lead, it makes that anxiety at work less, right?
Yeah.
It's one less thing you have to worry about.
Yeah. I think for me, the biggest contention was I had a series of bosses that, I think a good boss should take work off your plate and find you a pathway to doing work that you enjoy, that, there's a balance. But I just, so I say this because if our viewers, listeners, having a boss or having a system that keeps dumping shit on you, knowing you're about to break, and that it really isn't logical, and then putting these unrealistic timelines and those types of things on it, I think that really can cause tremendous anxiety, along with hey, the next time I'm walking out of a police station, I could be shot and killed just because I'm a cop, or somebody doesn't like me because I'm, a white cop. Those types of things. All that anxiety that's existing right now, police work, the internal anxiety is where I'm going with this. That's something that has to be fixed. They have to relieve that and understand that. Just because you sit at the ivory tower all day doesn't mean your cops aren't fucking stressed out to the max, and they have been for a while, a long while.
Yeah, and when I was going through the promotion process 2 years ago, my supervisor in a homicide unit's like, you really got to be careful, what you're asking for, when you're going to go get promoted, because not only do you have to worry about your family and your kids, but all of those cops that you're going to be supervising now, you got to worry about all of their shit, and they, in fact, become your kids as well. And I know you know that as a supervisor.
For sure.
I got to go. All right. Like my dog's going crazy. My wife just got home.
Boy, I was going to say somebody important came home and the dogs got happy.
But as a boss, you got to worry about all of those kids. So I know that it's a very daunting position to be in, that leadership position. But anything that you can do to lessen the anxiety on your work. Do you see me? They're all going to be like, you just gave your wife the ugly face. It was the dog.
They're like, damn, he just look at his wife like that? Shit.
But and that's, being a supervisor is a tough fucking job, but helping reduce your anxiety will help reduce the anxiety of your troops, so they'll better be able to, effectively serve the public. And that's ultimately what we do in our profession.
I think what I should have done and any boss or anybody in a position that's in charge of a project in law enforcement, whatever, you're the street deputy and your job is to provide all of this stuff for this case that's going on or whatever, is don't be afraid to say no. In the sense of not insubordinate, I'm saying is, look, I cannot have you that by Friday. It's fucking Thursday at 6 p.m. and you want this shit tomorrow, and that means I have to work all night on this. And unless it's life or death, the greatest quote. This is kind of where I'm going with this. The greatest quote I had was a guy named Mike that worked for me. He said, "You know what, Dan? Because we were at the training academy. There's no such thing as an emergency fucking PowerPoint." And I stopped and I paused. He goes, "There's no fucking such thing." Because I would come to him, "Oh, the lieutenant, wants this, and we got to have it done. It's an emergency." And and the guy was a veteran cop, very even keeled. He was a great example, and I learned a lot from him of how to just politely say, "Yeah, not going to happen. I'll get it done in my time." 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock, whatever our end of day was, he was out the door, and that was it. Don't call him at home, and so anxiety reduction starts with saying no, saying that's unrealistic, that's not going to happen, to keep that workload and keep that anxiety down, you know what I mean?
Yeah, saying no. It's a hard thing to do, right? Because we want to please everybody. We want to please our coworkers. We all want to lead by example, right?
Yeah.
You give me a task, I'm going to do it. I was the guy that, man, if my boss needed something done, she or he, whoever it was, know that they would come to me and I would get it done within an hour, no matter what it was. I would get it done. Not even taking into account how much pressure that put on me. I was laser focused. It's just like being in the military. You're given a task and you do it to the best of your ability, and you get done, and then you move on to the next task with not even thinking about how that affects you internally and up here.
Yeah, I still have. We talked a little bit about you had some recent weekly stuff where anxiety had set in, and I same thing. I kind of told you the story about the kid that came into the coffee store all tweaked out. And it's interesting because in my conversations with cops, we all have different things that kind of, I hate the word trigger. That sounds so fucking millennial and, offended cancel culture bullshit. But it's true. For me, it's irrational, emotionally disturbed people. They fuck me up in the sense of they put me on edge. And I'm actually calmer when a gangbanger walks in. I could tell he's just fresh out of prison, but he's just got that smooth demeanor. It's okay as long as you establish respect. Everything's good. But the fucking psychos that are off their meds or on dope or whatever, those rattle my cage. And we had a conversation that we were talking about with someone that driving was kind of their thing, where it was like the high speed driving or on the road, whatever it was. And I guess the point of that is just know that we all have different things that kind of really set that anxiety in motion, and what's yours?
Man, so back to the back to the dude that walked into your store. It's a perfectly rational thought, your thought process about what was going on that day, because you've had experiences with those type of individuals, and that they are extremely unpredictable, right? The slightest thing could set them off, versus the guy that just got out of prison, who's institutionalized, very polite most of the time, and they don't want to go back, the majority of them. So they bring that level of anxiety down when I would have contacts with those individuals. But yeah, like you said, tweakers, they're just so unpredictable, man. But as far as things that that cause me anxiety, it's a few months ago I was driving home and my obituary flashed in front of my eye. I was on I-10. I had to pull off the side of the road. I just started fucking bawling. I was coming home from work. Obituary flashed in my mind's eye. Detective Kurt Dabb, fought a long battle with PTSD and depression, passed away on such and such day, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? And after I calmed down and I started making my way home, I was just super amped, right? I was hyper fucking vigilant. I was looking over everything. I'd see a car with an outdated license plate tag, a cracked back window, a passenger side window. That's how they would break into cars, right? So stolen car, a license plate that doesn't belong on that car. All these different things. A guy looking like me, bald-headed, tattooed, tall and skinny, walking down the side of the street with a backpack on. Those are the things that get me when I'm out driving, whether I'm at work or not at work. And the reason being is those are the cars that we got in pursuits with, right? Those are the type of individuals that we've gotten in foot chases with and knockdown, drag-out fights with and shootings, Those have been so ingrained in our minds, in my mind, for the past 20 years, that those are the things that set me off. So I, constantly, whenever I'm driving, I'm just like looking around and I see somebody and I'm like, fuck. I'm at a Circle K and, one of those guys walks in and I'm just like, oh shit, please not today. Because I'm a shit magnet and shit comes to me, and it's just, I've had so many experiences off duty with shit like that, those are the things that set me off, that caused me the anxiety and the panic and the fear.
Yeah. One of the things I have done over the last couple years, was recognize what the anxiety kind of did, and there's at least 3 or 4 cops that I reached out to, and I said, hey, in the past, I kind of lashed out at you, and it wasn't cool, regardless of whatever the circumstances or differences were. And I kind of explained to them, hey, I was just kind of going through some things. And what was good about it was kind of like the, I don't know if this is the right analogy, but kind of like the alcoholic or drug addict that goes back and apologizes for their behaviors and their actions while they were sick. And
battered spouse syndrome, right?
Yeah, so I made a concerted effort, went back to these people and just apologized to them, and asked for, basically, them to understand where I was coming from. I was in a position that I wasn't on my best thing, and all of them, surprisingly, were pretty receptive and gracious about it, and actually thankful that we could actually have a good relationship. So I think for me, and I don't know if this works for others, is recognize you have to have that dose of humble. This is what anxiety does to me. This is the signs of it. Recognize it. And then how do I work through it? And there's different ways, whether it's therapy, peer group sessions, medication, whatever works for the individual. But then also go back and try to, at your own pace, for me, this is what worked, kind of process through some of the things that were damaged along the way because of that shit. And it's pretty cool for me to be able to have completely different relationships now that I don't have that anxiety at the level that I had it before. So I thought that was kind of an interesting spin over the last couple of years from when this thing started about 4 years ago.
Were you doing that while you were still working, having those
Yeah.
conversations with those cops? Yeah.
It started the last year I was there. I kind of said, if I could pick out certain interactions that I think were really not my best behavior and not something I want to be remembered by,
right,
and go back and fix it before I leave. And I did. I picked out, I'm sure I had more because I'm notorious for that shit, but I picked out 4. And then even more so, I try to build good relationships now. I try to recognize it's not the person or the thing that they're doing or not doing. It's my own battles internally with anxiety. And so kind of work through that. And that has been tremendous help for me.
Well, if you look at it, the the cops that you're talking to, and apologizing to, and down on bended knee asking for forgiveness, that's leadership, bro. And the reason those cops understood what you were saying and were so receptive to it is because they've been in that same fucking position, doling out that asshole,
Yeah.
And I guarantee you that it made a huge change in their behavior and the way that they dealt with others from the time that conversation happened until now.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. Just very, very strange. And strangely enough, the most recent one was just a couple months ago. I ran into a cop that's retired now at the cigar shop, and it just completely coincidental. And we had a bad interaction years ago. And I would say, looking back now, hindsight 2020, it was right when anxiety and stress was at its highest peak at that time. So I pulled him aside and said, hey, man, I have to apologize. Not my best behavior. You didn't deserve that. And I sincerely, want to tell you that I'm sorry that happened, and I hope that, we can turn a new page. And every time I see him all the time up there, and we stop and bullshit and have cigars and stuff like that. But, yeah, it just I think that helped get rid of old stress, but also prevent the new stress as well, and how you interact. Some people have that shit down. Like, they just have great communication skills. I fucking don't. And it's certainly
because you're a Marine, that's why.
Well, yeah.
And
right.
you're from Ohio, so.
Right, yeah. fucking farm kid from Ohio, Marine. Yeah, no shit. But yeah, so I thought, we could have tonight's episode just kind of a little bit about anxiety. I think that's where that shit starts, and it's got to be something we deal with. Cops have to deal with that right from the beginning.
Yeah, because if we don't, we end up in a bad spot. And man, that's one thing that if one piece of advice that anybody listening to this, or that I could impart to the young kids that are starting out right now, as soon as you notice those different behaviors, go talk to somebody,
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who, just talk to somebody, because if you just bury it, it's going to fucking eat you alive. And, before you know it, it may be too late. And, we lose too many cops, we lose too many service members, to suicide. And it's fucking sad, bro. No one took this job thinking that they're going to have to kill somebody or that they're going to be killed by somebody. And I damn sure guarantee you nobody took this job thinking that they're going to take their own life because they just can't deal with it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that with kind of working through that anxiety, having some time away from me, I see a lot of cops come into the shop. I pick up on it right away. There's a lot of fucking cops out there that have it, and maybe they don't even know they have. I'm not a doctor. I mean, I can't say exclusively, but I see like little symptoms, little reactions, body language, mannerisms in people, and I'm like, they're holding a lot of weight on their fucking shoulders right now. You know what I mean? And obviously, we know the current trends have set that weight on their shoulders, just to begin with, but then other factors too. So I'd like people to kind of take a look inside and go, if you've been a cop for a little while, you probably have some shit going on that you just may not know,
Yeah, not probably. You do have some shit going on. Honestly. And I didn't know what these feelings were that were going on inside of me. I couldn't put a name to it. My doctor couldn't put a name to it. I didn't know what it was until I started going to therapy, and it was actually diagnosed with something, and the amount of trauma that cops see on a daily basis, dude, it's unbelievable, and if you don't talk to somebody about it, it's gonna ruin your life.
Yeah.
It honestly is.
It'll ruin your marriage. It'll ruin your financial situation at home. It'll ruin your relationship with your kids. It'll ruin a lot of things if you don't get a grasp on it ahead of time. And so hopefully, I think we can. Yeah, I don't know how you or I do it, but as collective whole, change the system, how the system works with their cops, their employees, and then also how the cops themselves work through this stuff, recognize it, work through it. And I don't have all the answers. I'd love to have some professionals, come on here and kind of say, hey, these are some things about it that, but yeah, dude, the alcoholism, the infidelity, the divorces, the financial destruction, all of that stuff, gambling, it fucking wreaks havoc on our profession, because there is no other profession like this. Maybe the medical field, but I think it's a little different because we see it up close and personal, almost to the point where you smell it, the blood, the whatever, the iron in the blood, all that shit. And so, yeah, I think it's good to recognize, and I don't know all the details to anxiety. I just know what it feels like and when it's coming on and how to manage it. Some days it's easier than others. It's been a lot easier now that I've been away, and I think you're going to probably experience the same thing once you get away from it. it'll still be there, but it'll be a lot less. At least I hope. And as long as you're putting that foot forward to work on, I think a cop has a good chance to work through that anxiety before it's too late.
Well, that's that. When I was drinking, I wasn't a violent drunk. I was a happy drunk. All my friends are like, man, I miss drunk Kurt. But I didn't have a governor. You know what I mean? It was, if I was going to drink, I was going to drink full steam ahead. Never interfered with my work. I only did it on the weekends. But that's like anxiety. When it comes on, it's on. And there's no governor to it. There's nothing to regulate it unless you actually learn how to deal with it and learn effective treatment, different things that are tried and true that can help you get over that. Yeah, it's going to be there. But like you said, you're able to work through it every once in a while. Sometimes not. Most of the time, yeah. So once it turns on, you've got to be able to find that governor or that switch, through talking, through therapy, medication, whatever, to get it manageable. And that's the thing. We're all going to have it. We just need to be able to make it manageable so that we don't become those, drunk, wife-beating, drug-abusing cops that end up getting fired, arrested, and then killing yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
We've got to, and I'm not a doctor either. I just know from my experiences that, we mentioned it earlier, being humble. You can't ask for help without humbleness. And some of us, it takes a lot longer to find that humbleness.
So, deep topic today. Good chat, man. Hopefully some other cops can, take what we're saying and just kind of reflect in a little bit and seek out some help if you need it. I heard a quote this week that I thought was really, really powerful that I should share with every cop. And I think we all kind of know this intuitively, but when you put it like this, it really kind of popped in my head. And the fact is this career will never love you the same way you love it, ever, period.
True story.
That's just the way it is. The only thing that will be how you look at yourself and how you look at your family and your family looks at you. Those are the only things that you're in control of. You'll never, when gals retire, it's another plaque. It's another, and they move on to the next cop. So as you progress through your career, just remember that, where, keep it in mind that it's just a job.
Yeah. It's a fun job, too.
It is. So
the best fucking job in the world.
It is, man. It's fucking, the greatest show on earth, as we were told 20 years ago, and it truly is. So, but it comes with, some flip sides to it. Also, kind of end on a good note. Just want to, the cops that are still out there, hitting the streets every day, still doing it, putting on a good head and good mindset and doing their jobs. God bless them. I hope that they're safe, and I hope they continue to keep doing what they're doing. And wish them all well. I'm actually donating some coffee this weekend to a whole entire squad, and I'm going to try to do that periodically, where just as a thank you, keep trucking, keep doing your thing, don't let this shit get to you. Don't make bad decisions because of the anxiety and the stress. Just, if you want to stay in this career, take a look at yourself, make sure you got it together, and keep doing what you're doing.
Hell yeah. And reach out to me, reach out to Dan, shoot us a DM, whatever.
Yeah.
It happens all the time.
Yeah. I get a lot of messages now. It's crazy.
Yep. It's awesome. So if you ever need anybody to talk to, reach out.
Yeah. Pick up the phone. It's better than the last measure by far. So got to start somewhere. On that note, thanks for being on the show again, Kurt. And I think we're going to have many more episodes as we cut through this and kind of, find our groove. And the podcast is doing great. I love it. It's we've got a lot of good feedback, so we're going to keep it going with lots of different stuff and, mix it up and have some good stories along with some tough times as well, and just to kind of share that. So.
Yeah, I got a bunch of good stories. We'll have to have a story time one of these days.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So on that note, thanks for being on the show. Get a chance for our listeners, stop by Filthy Pirate Coffee, get some coffee, come see us. And that's all I got. Peace.